Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Hey everyone, this is Scott, your host. In following my own voice that calls to adventure, I recently traveled to the kingdom of Bhutan, the land of the thunder dragon and the last Shangri-La. Bhutan is a mystical and magical place high in the Himalayas, and it's known for its breathtaking nature, ecology, spirituality, and the happiness of its people. It's the only carbon-negative country in the world, and it's known as one of the happiest places on Earth. I joined Paralympic gold medalist Karen Dark on this journey, along with 8 others, and it was the trip of a lifetime. The show you're about to hear is just one of a 3-part series on Bhutan. In the first episode, we'll cover a recap of the trip from the participants' point of view and the transformations that took place. In part 2, we'll dive deeper into the spirituality of Buddhism in Bhutan with His Holiness Khedrup Rinpoche, a reincarnated master. And in part 3, we'll learn about the Bhutanese concept of gross national happiness, used as a filter for governing through a focus on the happiness of the people over economics. I hope you'll join me for all 3 of these enlightening conversations. This is episode 2 of the series. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Scott Wurzbacher, and this episode is going to be very special. Recently, I traveled with a group of people, many of whom have been guests on this podcast, to the kingdom of Bhutan, nestled high in the Himalayas. Spirituality and Buddhism are at the very center of Bhutanese culture, and they play an integral role in the widely recognized sense of happiness that exists there. As part of the journey, our trip organizers blessed us with the privilege to spend time with a very wise and compassionate Buddhist leader, and this person moved me deeply. It is one of the great honors of my life to have him as a guest on this show today. I am so excited to introduce you all to Khedrup Rinpoche, the 5th successive reincarnation of the first Khedrup who lived and served Bhutan in the 1700s. Rinpoche is the founder and incumbent president of the Khedrup Foundation, a nonprofit religious organization, and he's head of the Sangchen Ogyen Tsuklag Monastery in Trongsa, Bhutan. Upon returning from our trip, it was my hope to be able to share the wisdom of Bhutan and Eastern spirituality on this podcast, and Rinpoche has ever so graciously agreed to help do that. Your Holiness, welcome to the Campfire.
Thank you so much, Scott. It is really honor for me to be part of this podcast. And this is my first time doing a podcast, so I hope whatever I share here, I hope that benefits everyone. I mean, to your listeners, especially. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. I am so excited. You know, our group was so lucky to have spent time with you in Bhutan over dinner. And then we had this amazing and absolutely magical opportunity to actually come to your monastery and spend the night at the monastery with you and with the monks that live there. And we had an opportunity to really get to know you. I just wonder if we could start, for those listening that haven't had that opportunity, if we could just spend a couple of minutes helping my listeners get to know who you are. And so I wonder if we first could just start with a quick explanation of the meaning of the title Rinpoche.
The Rinpoche, basically, it means like precious one. You know, it goes to the name. This name especially goes to those who are, you know, not by how much wealth they have, or not by you know, who this person is, particularly with this, especially in terms of like materialistic things. This is not the name for this kind of things. This name is particularly for those who are actually highly realized one and very highly learned in terms of Buddhism, and then who has this great, precious, wisdoms in that one person. So the name goes to this kind of person called, Rinpoche. So, but like, this name comes to me not because I have these great qualities. I am still, I am a noble man. I lag of all those great qualities. I still have to build these great qualities in me, and it will take another, I don't know, like, life and another kind of like lifetime. So I don't know whether I really really qualified myself to be called Rinpoche or not. But not people have been so kind to me, and then they have given me this title Rinpoche, not because of my quality, but because of where the seat I'm sitting on, and then the service that I give to people, and the opportunity that it is given to me, especially with the name that the moment that when I was recognized as a fifth reincarnation of Khedrup Rinpoche. So since after that, people have, people are kind enough to embraced kind enough to empower me with this
Yeah.
great title, but I'm still praying that may I really become the precious one. So this name to me is kind of like a kind of power. It's kind of like one thing that it makes me always to have an aspirations to myself. So may I be able to have enhance all those great precious qualities one day in my life. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Thank you for that. So you mentioned the recognition. You were recognized as a Rinpoche as the fifth successive reincarnation. And I was reading a little bit on the Khedrup Foundation website, and it talked about the recognition process that happened at a very early age. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, there are so many different ways of recognizing the young tulkus. We call it tulkus, the reincarnate ones. In especially the Tibetan culture and Bhutanese culture, it's almost similar. And um, in one way of doing this recognition is that your predecessors leave kind of like prophecies saying that where you're going to be born, and also when the child itself or himself or herself has this qualities of remembering the past. So in my case, when my mom, when she was just 13 years old, my predecessor was still alive, and she happens to have met him several incidents. And in one incident, so he kind of said to her that if I have a power to be reborn, I will be born as your son. So that's kind of like prophecy that he has left to my mom. And yeah, so following after he died, the fourth Khedrup Rinpoche, when after he died, so in 1990, 1990 May 9th, I was born. And I can't remember anything right now, but this is what my parents, and also when I was as a child, I had this slight memories of how I used to remember that, but I can't remember the past, but I can remember how I used to speak about the past in the young age. So I used to remember maybe like those incidents about the past lives and histories and something that is related to that kind of things, and belongings, recognizing the belongings of the predecessors, and also there were a kind of like a confirmation from the highly realized masters saying that, hey, this is a mistaken child of the fourth Khedrup, and like that. So I was recognized that way, and I was brought to monastery when I was 11. So
Okay.
pretty late age, but I think when I was just 4 5 years old, I was officially recognized, and I was once enthroned within the communities of Khedrup, past Khedrup Rinpoches. Yeah, and this is how I did.
Yeah, and so you actually just mentioned the actual enthronement. And that was another thing that I read on your website. there was some mention on there about how you had become ill, and there was a prophecy about the cure for the illness. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that one, that one I pretty have don't. I pretty don't much don't have much things to talk about because I was seriously ill,
Mhm.
and I I went to the hospitals. I was actually studying, and I went to hospitals. I get some treatments, but it couldn't work, for almost a year long. So I was really not doing well. So some of my kind of like hardcore followers, I could say, so they were quite worried, and they thought I won't leave. So they kind of like visited those masters that who have this clairvoyance. So they kind of seek for a prediction, saying that, can you please, I mean, divinations. It's kind of like
Mhm.
a divination. So they, can you please do a divinations for our young Rinpoche, how he could be doing, he is not doing well. And then they kind of, in these divinations, it comes out that I should be grandly enthroned so that he will be all right. So it's kind of like a miracle. So I
Yes.
was asked to come to the monastery, and they have arranged this big kind of event, and almost like thousands of people gathered. So on that, I was officially enthroned, and since after that, yeah, it looks like somehow like a miracle. All of my sickness were gone. I was all right, and there was I revisit my doctors and said, "Oh, you have no sickness now. Don't worry. You could just continue with these medicines." So sometimes I don't know. Maybe like I really can't explain what kind of logic is there behind this
Yeah.
kind of thing. So,
Yeah.
but it actually worked.
Yeah. Hey, it's a miracle. It's amazing. So can you kind of talk us through, like, from that point, like the enthronement, kind of maybe talk you through sort of your journey in your teenage years and your early 20s as you kind of going through this process and your studies, and kind of how you got from recognition to enthronement to now where you are leading the Khedrup Foundation, running the monastery.
Well, first of all, I think this might be a quite common things, but where everyone would kind of say, "Hey, everyone, my parents was like that." But I would like to say I'm blessed to have my parents,
Mm,
though my parents were kind of like poor family, and then I was actually really born in poor family, and actually I could say like a very remote place where there was no car road, there was no electricity until I think 2000, I think 7, 8, there was no electricity in that areas, and there was
mm,
no telephones, and there was something so called wireless long term back I could remember, and now just 2000, I think 2021. So there's a car roads now recently has reached that place. So I was born that kind of places in which I have experienced how the 19th century might look like
yeah.
in a how. So I have these memories because when I was raised, we the light was not electricity, neither that was solar. It was like this, how to say, pine cone. We need
Okay.
to yeah, we have to burn some of the pine wood
Yeah.
sometimes. So like,
Yeah.
so yeah, it can burn well. So and then kind of 1 or 2 years later, then there was kerosene. So we used to use these kind of things for lights at night, and yeah, so many incidents like that. And I was born these kind of places, so born in that kind of poor family background, and I was recognized, but it was very challenging. But now when you're talking about like a young Rinpoche to really get this, I mean, like formal educations, not all everything has been done by a monastery or everything else. Some part your family has to support it. So my family was not able to do that. So I was kind of like, where young Rinpoches are taken place at. I was not able to do that. But yet, when I really recollect things back, it was all blessings. I was left in the local monasteries, educating until I think 2006. So I was left there. When I turned 16, 2006. So I was then formally enrolled in higher Buddhist studies in Mindroling in India, where I actually completed my kind of masters in sutras and tantras, which 2015 I graduated from that. And also, my former, let's say my predecessor, fourth Khedrup Rinpoche, didn't had any monasteries to take care of. He was a wanderer yogi, so he used to just hide inside the caves, and sometimes he, like wanders around. So he holds a family, so he
Yeah.
has sons and daughters to look after. So he was really, really a great practitioner in that way, but he didn't succeed in this looking after the monasteries and so, which actually he was very brilliant. So he was practicing in his entire life, where today I don't get this opportunity. To kind of like, how to say, shift your life from where nothing else to have something else
Mm-hmm.
is something else, isn't it? So when I was just studying in university, the bunch of people from central Bhutan, when I was actually making a pilgrimage, one of my assistants used to be from that area where my
Mm-hmm.
monastery is today. And he kind of invited me to his place, saying that he has a piece of land, so that just to visit, he just said, please come and bless my land,
Yeah.
so that in future we can do something else. I said, okay, let's go, because that's future. I was just 18 years old, so it's nothing big deal. So okay, let's go. It's all along the way, and we reached there. So a bunch of people just approached us like, can you please take care of this temple? And not knowing any background histories of the temple, and anything else. So I was just forced to take care of that. So I said, like, I'm not capable of that. But they just kind of insisted again and again. And some of my kind of advisors also said, like, Rinpoche, now you should take care of that. And I was just, like I was studying, I can't manage financially. I can't manage,
Yeah.
to kind of like do any kind of administration work at the same time. So and when I was just 19, so I was really forced to take care of this monastery. So I mean, like, I have to actually receive that monastery officially from the government and the people. And yet, it was so many things going on at the same time. So it was very, very difficult to really manage that temple and the monastery. Let's say, like, there was almost 16, 17 young monks living with me. And then they were kind of, when I just go to my studies, they were teacherless. They were, they
Yeah.
were foodless sometimes. So it was very difficult to manage that. Well, anyways, some of them were so brave that they leave the monastery for the education, and they did well. And I'm really, I have nothing to be offended about. So I'm so happy for that. They
Yeah.
leave because they have to build a life. So I think 2014, 15, after my graduation, then only I would able to enroll in all those constructions, everything. And then in order to really raise this big project, which actually that happens, this entire monastery happens to be a really historical temple. And you really wanted to keep that as historical piece, or you wanted to just create it in another monument. It's up to you, isn't it? So you have this authority to use the entire lands around the monastery. So then I began to construct. I kind of like got a little bit help from my followers and my friends, and then like this is how we actually began. We began with hostels, and then now we begin with the conference hall, and we begin with guest house and dining halls, and so that now we have nearly like 40 to 50 monks living there.
Yeah.
Senior
And
ones are in retreat centers, then the almost like, how to say, like, those who are I mean old enough to study the higher Buddhist studies. We have studied academic studies from last year, and then the junior ones are doing their schools. So kind of like now we are running a big family.
yeah.
So in order to support these things, I raised the Khedrup Foundation in 2017. So again, my Buddhist followers and my friends around the world kind of like encouraged me to start that, the organizations to support. and to really connect people, around from the world. So it's very important for me. So it's kind of like, how to say, some part of my activities in my life is, I feel like, it has helped so many ways to establish through that kind of organizations.
Yeah, it's important. And so this monastery that you're talking about is the monastery that my group and I came to visit, and we spent time with you there. And it is breathtaking. It is high up in the mountains of Trongsa, and it looks out over the valley. And there's beautiful structures, both historic and new. I think the building that we spent the night in was only a year old.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, just beautiful. And so I think that you have 40 something monks that are there now.
Nearly 50, yeah. When you can include all the monks and the retreat and everything,
Yeah.
which you guys didn't make it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how do the monks come to be at that monastery?
Well, yeah. We have different categories of monks there.
Mhm.
You know, there are just a few numbers of monks that who are from a very wealthy family background and who has really keen interest to become a monk. Just a few,
Mhm.
and most of them are, let's say, like orphan or like kind of like single-handed family.
Uh-huh.
So either like from a family background of like those families are alcoholic like that.
Okay.
So they kind of, some of them are brought to the monastery by the parents. Some of them are brought to them to the monastery in open on their own interest. But I would like to choose to. I would like to talk about those family. I mean, those the monks that who come upon their own interest. I mean, they get some kind of like they really wanted to kind of like this is kind of their fantasy. When they see sometimes like the monks are invited to the kind of like their house to perform ceremonies, and when they kind of like see like this fancy trumpet blowings and playing the cymbals and like chant and all this, oh wow, it looks so good, I want to become that.
Yeah.
They become that more attractive, what, and then they become that kind of thing because of the attractive.
Yeah.
And unless that they are quite old enough, they won't realize what is the purpose of the monkhood. They won't know that. So we kind of like say, okay, come, and then we are going to give you education. That's
Mhm.
very important. It's not only about the monastic educations, but we are trying to give them as much as possible the modern education, so that their life is built. You know what? This education should be able to transform somebody's life. Otherwise, this monastic education, what you learn from blowing, learn to blow something, conch, blow the trumpets,
Yeah.
things. It might work when you are in the monastery, but when you go out of monasteries,
All
then I
right.
don't know that would really work or not. If you have to, for example, if you have to drive the taxi, you can't just blow the trumpet in the taxi, isn't it? So we are trying to really cooperate this with this modern education as much as possible. So that's what we do. And then those who actually comes from a wealthy family, those who comes after their graduations, they know the purpose of why they have to become a monk. The reason to become a monk is to actually achieve an enlightenment in this lifetime, whether they were able to do it to that or not. But actually that's a value that they hold inside. That's a mission they have. So they study they study to become enlightened. They contemplate and analyze to become enlightened. They meditate to become enlightened. So they have kind of pure perceptions for that. They have concrete perceptions for that. So it's really wonderful. Those who are young ones, we still say like they are so pure in their heart. They're still wondering something else. They still have so many things to encounter in this life. So what we give them is we give them home, we give them schools, we give them education. So that's what I can say. And then once they kind of grow up, if they wanted to say like, okay, this is not my place. Okay, yes, fine. You just go and live your normal life. So basically, this is the monastery is not just a monastery where they get a monkhood education, but I actually really want to say this. The monastery is something that I get to practice the humanity.
Mm.
You know, this is what important beyond than everything. Yeah, for me.
Yeah. Wow. So that's really just profound, the humanity piece of it. And I want to relate kind of my experience when we came to the monastery, because our very first experience when we arrived was the young monks lined up to receive us. And I mean, they're as cute as can be. They're just adorable. They're full of curiosity. They're full of fun. We just had an absolute blast just playing with them that first afternoon. I mean, we found a ball. We were playing catch with them. We were, they were taking pictures. There's a couple of people in my group that are photographers, and so they were playing with the monks, the young monks, and showing them how to use the camera. And they're just so full of like life and vibrancy. And I think it was really like probably one of the most memorable experiences for me, was to just have that experience with those young monks. And I think just for the listeners, like to just hear what life is like for them, especially the young monks, it would be really helpful.
Yeah, how we used to be when we were a child. So it's
Yeah.
almost like similar for them as well. Always excited about if there is something to play with.
Yeah.
Yeah, child's always like that. Many of I think my childhood memories, I think it's the same thing. I used to just enjoy what my teachers asked me not to do, all the time. So this is the nature of the child. They're mischievous, obviously. They just like to. But I would like to tell you this: like now, our monks that who lives in the monastery, we always remember. I also remind our director and then some of our teachers to teach them the value that not just simply education from the books, but also from like street smart, for example. It's very
Mm,
important. So when there is a guest coming, learning something from them is also very important. So everyone is a teacher if you have ability to learn from another person. Any kind of life, I mean, any kind of things, incidents in your life can become a wisdom in your life if you have ability to take that as a wisdom,
mm,
to transform your life. So they're always kind of like, waiting to, have something else in their lives, always excited about something else. For example, if there's a football, wow, football, you know what?
yeah.
And they're not always excited about the football. If there's like, football for a week long, then it's like, oh, so boring. This is what they are, you know. And they have to like, okay, jump into televisions, like, oh, wow, televisions. And then again, not always about television. And sometimes they're kind of good with the kind of like singing, for example, like they get so excited about that things as well. And then they get excited, for example, the guest house that we have. We sometimes get different kind of like guests, like your group is foreigners, and we have like Buddhist guests. And so in Buddhist guests, we have a kind of a young age and old age people. And
Yeah.
then no, it's we don't have outside people to manage that guest house. It's all done by monks, the room making and then serving the tea and then helping the guest and all those things. So what I try to kind of like encourage them is like, we really need to have all those kind of qualities in your life in order to function your life properly, because life itself is a big business thing, by the way. Really. And now again, in living in this 21st century is a big challenge, because anything has to be done with, like, if there is no, let's say, like a skills that you have, if you lack of skills, then if, let's say, pretty say it's for 100%, like, and that person would become almost like a beggar, isn't it?
Yeah.
You really, for example, if you have to do a business, you have to have a PR, you have to have a economical knowledge, you have
Mhm.
to have a skills to do the businesses, you have to have a skills of how to connect to people, so that that person becomes your daily customers. It's very important to have
Yeah.
this hospitality kind of like mentality is very important. So I kind of like always encourage our monks, not just me, like, so I'm so grateful that our teachers do there over there, our director and teachers, they all kind of teach this kind of values to our monks. It's so important to have this kind of like quality, kind of like outcome of these qualities of kindness, loving and kindness and excitements,
Mm-hmm.
And whatever that you kind of encounter within the monastery, it's very important to receive that with so much excitement, That's how we teach them. So, so most of them actually they try to do that,
They
and
did that very well, very well. I
every
mean, they were serving us and made us very, very comfortable. They're definitely learning their hospitality skills.
yeah, and they actually are very much into the games as well. Like if there is a football, they will just make every ground the football ground. So unless we have a proper football ground, actually, which we are planning to construct a futsal ground for them. You know what? Because within the monastery, it's very important for them now. The young monks has to have exercise. Otherwise, the monks, I think, when they kind of like grow older, many of them have this, how to say, like, diabetics
Mm.
and kidney problem and so and so. I myself, when I don't have any exercise, so I think it's very important for them. So, unless we have that proper ground, they will just make every ground as football
Yeah,
ground.
they like to play. They definitely like to play. We saw that. Rinpoche, I wanted to ask you, because one of the things that we did while we were there with you is we spent time around a campfire, and this is the Inspire Campfire podcast. And I just wanted to acknowledge that evening that we spent together and how much fun we had. Your monks made a beautiful campfire for us, and we all sat, our whole group, and you and several of your monks, we sat around this campfire and we talked. But then we also sang, and we sang some silly campfire songs, and we had some laughs. And then one of your young monks actually performed an Ed Sheeran song for us, and it was just so beautiful. And I just wanted to ask you, from your perspective, I'm here in the United States right now. You're on the other side of the world. We're 10 hours apart from a time difference. What is it about a campfire? What is it about a fire and sitting around a fire that unites people?
Well, the fire energy itself is a kind of like warm, like the nature by nature of the fire is a warmness. But if you do not know how to handle it properly, it will burn you as well.
Mm.
And something so called a campfire is very interesting. What? If you, I have never thought of how to explain that, which but now I'm actually, when I really think back about these things, it's campfire is not something that is done by one person. Campfire means like a bunch of people getting together, sitting around the fire and then doing some activities or talking and chit chatting. Anyways, to talk, there is something to do with it.
Yeah.
So I think campfire basically it's a very powerful thing. It could be probably where you can gather with communities where you share the warmness. You know what? You can basically say you can share with the warmness.
Yeah.
For example, singing a song could be one thing. Singing a song means you don't sing a song when you going, yeah,
Yeah.
you're falling.
Yeah.
You know, Singing a song means like a kind of celebration. So celebration means it's a memory, isn't it? It's a memory. You're creating a memory, and that memory is a life. Basically, we always this life is full of memories, isn't it? What I did yesterday is a memory. What I'm doing right now could be tomorrow's memory. There's always kind of memory, but what kind of memory you want to create? That's very important.
Mm.
You want to create a good memory. You want to create a bad memory. It's totally on your hand. So if you wanted to have a good memory tomorrow, so it's very important to do something today properly, and if something that is good, that is benefiting others, that is really really something that could transform yourself and others. That is good memory type of things. So you know, campfire can become one of those kind of community building things where people can gather together to share your values each other, and then you can kind of nourish each other, you can kind of like boost each other, you can kind of like, have a fun of your life. You can create good memories, probably.
Yeah.
So
We,
that's what I
we,
think.
we created some great
Yeah,
memories
we
that
have
night.
great memory.
We did. So the next morning after the campfire, we spent some time with you in the temple. We did some prayer and some meditation. And then after breakfast, we got to spend an hour with you. And you gave us some really wonderful teachings. And I kind of was hoping that you might be able to share some of that. But one of the things during the teachings that really grabbed me in particular was on this podcast, we talk a lot about this voice inside that calls us to adventure. And the podcast is it's stories of people that have felt called to go do something, and they've listened to this voice. And when I was listening to your teachings that morning, you talked about this inner guru that each of us has.
Mm.
And I immediately thought about this voice that calls us to adventure. And I just was wondering if you might be able to share with the listeners a little bit about this inner guru that each of us has.
Okay. Yeah, this is in the Mahayana teaching, especially the Mahayana, the Vajrayana. There is the perceptions of guru student devotion, and I think in the West, there's many ways that guru student relationship is somehow also misunderstood in so many ways, and where the gurus has I don't know, like, whether that's really right words to use it or not, but like, some gurus might have abusive characters, and therefore like students do not like it, and some students, of course, might not be always right. But like, when you talk about the guru student devotions, there is guru and student connection. There is always there one connection that is connected through each other is the devotions. So as I said earlier, the purpose of practicing Buddhism is not about uh, kind of, how to say, achieving the peaceful mind and calm mind and all kind of harmony and happiness. This is not the purpose, and actually the actual purpose of practicing Buddhism. I should tell you this. These are all byproduct. Peaceful is byproduct. Happiness is byproduct. A joyful is a byproduct. A calm mind is byproduct. And likewise, successful is byproduct. All those things are byproduct.
Mm.
So the actual purpose of practicing Buddhism is enlightenment. When you really talk about enlightenment, then that is very important. So in Vajra, especially in Vajrayana, when you really practice, you practice through the devotions. Through the devotions. It's not just simply meditation. Meditation. It's not always about meditation, but there is meditation is, I don't know what people talk about meditation. What actually the meditation is all about. Meditation is not just simply sitting, not just simply, here I have to be this, do not think about any other things. Some meditations have so many things to do with, invoking yourself, in the visualizations, likewise, so and so. But generally, the essence, I'm talking about essence. Mm, we have these devotions between the guru. Guru means like, hey, obviously we would talk about, hey, my guru means another person, isn't it? Who has a power to guide you through, who has a power to really, really give you the pit instructions towards enlightenment. That's the guru, the one who is already enlightened himself or herself, and who actually embodied the figure of the Buddhas of all three times. So that kind of things, we call it our guru, that we actually say that's our guru. And we should have these devotions towards the guru. And that you practice through that in order to recognize your own Buddha nature. But the purpose of practicing guru, purpose of having a devotions to guru, is to actually recognize yourself, basically, yourself. So when you talk about yourself, when you talk about the guru itself, then there is like, there are all the different kind of categories of guru. There is outer guru, there is inner guru. For example, if you're talking about the inner guru is none other than your mind. For example, if you talk about in your visit, we almost, let's say, all day talks about Padmasambhava, how important that is important. Padmasambhava also himself said, like, and I'm not separated from yourself, it says. So what does it mean by I'm not separated from yourself? Is it this body Padmasambhava? I think no, this is actually your mind is Padmasambhava, if you're able to recognize it. So if you're able to recognize that you have these great qualities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who have actually enlightened, like, it's the same thing as your mind. Your mind is the same root. So for the present moment, your mind is not able to discover this, what is so called the fragrance of the Buddha, is not yet there because your mind is covered by, this emotional dust.
Mm.
So if you're able to purify that emotional dust, this purity and the pristine of this nature of the Buddha nature of the Buddha nature, which is just within your mind, will slowly begin to wake up. It will awake itself. So when you talk about the inner guru, so practicing the devotions to your guru is basically building a bridge to recognize your inner guru. So it's very important. So when you really practice this inner guru, it is only be able to, it's only available. This is, I think, what from last 2000 years itself, this is how it has been practiced, and it's still practicing this way. And then this has proven that, in many ways, this is the accurate way. So practicing more towards your outer guru, the devotions that you pay, the practices you do towards your guru, that connects back to your inner guru. So you're able to recognize your inner guru like that, because, inner guru also has to discover through devotion itself. So devotion that you have for your respected guru is the same devotion you need to have towards your inner guru. And likewise, for example, committing a suicide in the Buddhism is a big crime. It's a big sin. Yeah. The reason is that because you're murdering a Buddha itself. Yeah. Because Buddha is not just the one who has this radiant and serene looks and so calm looking, who has this golden top. That's not just Guru. That's a figure of Guru. It's kind of outpost of Guru. The actual Guru and the actual Buddha is your own mind. That's what actually the great Vasubandhu, one of the greatest scholars in India, he actually said. He made a statement that this Buddha is not outside. Looking for the Buddha outside in yourself in the different corner of a world is just simply exhausting. Just look into yourself. The mind is the one which is the Buddha itself. If you're able to recognize that, you don't need to go anywhere else, just there. You just have to discover that your mind, which is the Buddha nature itself. So that mind, when you talk about the Guru, that's your inner Guru. And if you're able to understand this mind itself, the mind is the one who will guide you through everything else. For example, the intention, wow, okay. For example, if the rich people, okay, I have so much money, what should I do? Okay, maybe I should become a philanthropist. I should donate it to some poor people. Or maybe I should donate it to some schools. I should donate it to some monastery, for example. You have to have a thought, isn't it? Where does those thoughts come from? It comes from your mind. All those good things come from your mind. And at the same time, if you're not being careful, if you're not able to recognize your inner Guru, then this mind becomes again mischievous. You know what? Oh, okay, I have this much money, but now I need more. How should I take it? He has the money. I'll make this project proposal to him. I'll take all of his monies. You're beginning to steal somebody's money. Yeah, again, this mind is the one which is processing all those thoughts. So if that's because you're not able to recognize your inner Guru. So if you're able to recognize your inner Guru, basically it's having a trust on yourself, having devotion to yourself, devotion on your great qualities, not to that kind of negative qualities. There's negative qualities are all dust. It should remove. Even there's good things has to go actually. But there are so many things to talk about this inner guru, which if we have a time, we can explore more in the future. But generally speaking, when you talk about the inner guru, it's basically discovering, knowing your own nature is very important. Having a respect to yourself. Respect to yourself is not just simply putting yourself with a high throne, giving yourself the golden jacket. It's not that.
Yeah.
Respecting yourself means, not letting your mind pollute by your emotional doubts.
Yeah.
Taking care of that, watching yourself, not letting yourself tortured by your emotional doubts. So that's how you respect yourself. Respect your inner gurus this way. Yeah.
So I love this so much. And I heard you say like peace, happiness, success. These are byproducts of enlightenment. And so I want to ask, I think you've already alluded to this, but I just want to ask the question, can you tell the listeners and can you tell me what is enlightenment?
So enlightenment has so many. I don't know whether this enlightenment does have really the kind of accurate translation of, we call it sangye. In Buddhist word we call sangje. Sangye we can say. Sang means purify, purifying your entire emotional doubts, out of your mind. And ge means develop the great qualities of the mind itself. Is called enlightenment, for example. This is how what actually meaning of enlightenment should be, as per as per the Dharma. And when you talk about enlightenment, for example, an ordinary person, for example, myself, every moment, if you're giving attention on it, enlightenment is always there. You are, you, for example, hey, I did stupid things, isn't it? For example, okay, I went to some places and for example, pilgrimage. Hey, looking around. Oh wow, nice, nice scene. You take pictures, visit somebody else, talk with somebody else, eating different kind of food, singing a song, dance, and come back. Sit back, thinking about something. Oh, nothing else. It was all empty again. Hey, these are all just memories. I have just been there. I've invested so much money there. I have eaten so much foods. That's it. What's there? If there is nothing else that you could actually understand from that, now you realize, hey, I have just wasted my time, isn't it? I shouldn't do that in future. That's one enlightenment, isn't it? You're realizing how you have wasted wasted your things. And you have, for example, specialist suffering. I would tell you, specialist suffering is something that could always contribute something to your enlightenment if you are able to understand the suffering in the proper way. Suffering means like, struggling something, isn't it? It's not just physical suffering, but your mental suffering, for example. We call it mental illness or something, and which in the West, I think emotions are very, very important. And where in the East, we would talk 100% opposite of that, how emotions is not, emotions are important less, for example. Of course it's very important. You have to give the time and then all the resources to understand that, but we don't give much kind of like times and energies to understand that and to give some attentions to that. As much as possible, emotions are emotions. You are supposed to forget that. For example, anger does not stays all the time. Anger comes, and then by the nature that you understand the anger is there, the anger is gone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your kind of anger is not something, a permanent thing. It's the same thing again. So realizing these things, for example, understanding the true nature of yourself, your mind, is enlightenment. When you really kind of like transform your mind totally, when you're fully awakened of your mind, you're enlightened. That's how we can say.
Thank you. That's a beautiful answer. I want to kind of finish up with sort of bringing back to like the Western culture. So when we came to visit you and we had dinner, one of the common questions that the whole group had for you was, we took this trip more as a pilgrimage than, a sightseeing trip. Like we wanted to come learn from the people of Bhutan. We wanted to come learn from you and see what things we could bring back to our Western culture to share with our communities. And so I want to ask you if you have any advice for us in our Western culture about how to incorporate some of these things in the way that we live, the United States and Europe and Canada, because those are the countries that we came from. But what advice would you have for us here in the Western culture?
Well, the Western cultures are very liberating, isn't it? I think I don't know, I might be wrong, but for me, I think Western cultures are very liberating. And yes, at the same time, there are people that who are not liberated at all, who are really, 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 attached to something else, their name and the fam, and yeah, have it could be everywhere like that. But one thing that we need to keep in mind is that we should understand whatever you do, whatever the cause it is, it's very important to have something in your life that you have to have a mission, isn't it?
Mm.
I don't know. Sometimes it's good to have a mission, but sometimes it's too bad. You have been chasing this dream and missions for lifetimes, and you still get you get so exhausted about that things. And sometimes good, sometimes it's too bad. But what I have to tell you is that wherever you go, whatever you do, you have been carrying out the same thing, memory. And the nature of this memory is all impermanence. And this impermanent thing is emptiness. So whatever you do is very, very important to have, like you have to, we should learn to how to be free from this kind of like how does attachment of whatever it is. Attachment is something that keeps us binded. It's very important to let it free. So memory, when it comes, let it come. When it goes, let it go. If you are somewhere else and if you're enjoying the same, just enjoy that. If you are there to, and I mean like, do a total kind of like pilgrimage, just do that. Learn the values, enlighten yourself. Otherwise, everything is impermanent, everything is emptiness. One day, everything is going to vanish out of your eyes. And so, therefore, just simply be yourself. Just simply stay in the present moment, enjoy whatever that you're doing. That's, I don't know what I should say more than this.
I
I
don't know that you
but
need to. I think that's exactly. I mean, I think that's just perfect. I think that's a perfect way for us to finish. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm curious if is there anything else that you'd like to share in terms of the our group that came to visit, or any other wisdom that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
Well, it was really great you gave me this opportunity, but I have not so much. I haven't thought anything special, but time and again speaking, that now everyone who is listening to this podcast, we all has this nature of enlightenment in ourselves. So therefore, we have to have a faith in our life. We have to have a devotions in our life, but not always for something that is outside in yourself. Sometimes it's very important. Look into yourself. You should have your own faith. You should have your own devotions. You look into your own nature. Stay calm. Be happy. So that's a very natural way of doing it. Otherwise, always looking outside, we end up polluting something else that contributes sometimes to the global warming as well. So it's very important to purify yourself, be yourself, and discover your own nature. Is very important at the same time. Contribute more on outside environments. When you are clean inside, that definitely will contribute the cleanliness of the outside world. So that's it. What I wanted to just say, and thank you so much. It is really, really, like a wonderful kind of like a pleasure feeling
Yes,
to
thank
be
you.
on.
And
the
I
podcast.
might take you up on that conversation to go deeper on the inner guru, because that's a really wonderful conversation. It was
That's
my absolute honor to have you on this show. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming on here and speaking with me. And for those who are listening, I hope that you have been inspired today as much as I have. I hope the wisdom of His Holiness has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, your inner guru, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or you need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thank you for listening. Rinpoche, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much.